Thank you, dear Corrine. Good morning, everybody. It's very special to be together.
Goldie.
Is it okay, Mum? Can you hear me? So hearing about your dad, Corrine, and on his shloshim, and one is moved to tears by the journey of a neshama and everything that you're doing for his neshama. And it's also the month of Elul, which is a month of deep connection to Hashem, when we're often moved to tears as we hope for a sweet new year and we try to add holiness to our lives and feel Hashem's presence. And what can I say? COVID has been a time of so many tears. And so today I thought I'd share something I learned from my Balaam's talks about women who cried. And all of their tears are recalled on Rosh Hashanah. And the four women I'd like to discuss this morning are the mother of Sisera, Hagar, Hannah, and Rachel. What can we learn from their tears? So the first one I'm going to share is about the mother of Sisera. And she lived at the time of the Canaanites and the time of the Shoftim. Sisera led a huge army against the Jewish people a couple of thousand years ago in Israel. And an incredible woman named Devorah led the Jews in war against Sisera, and the Jews won. And so Devorah sang, and she sang a song to thank Hashem. And in that song, she describes the mother of Sisera. And she says over there, this woman is peering intently out of the window, and a nagging question burns within her. And she's asking herself, why is my son so late in coming? Where is he? He's coming from a war against the Jews, and surely he has won. So why do the wheels of his chariot tarry? And she answers, soothing herself, surely my son and his soldiers are busy dividing the spoils. They surely have gotten a lot of cloths and embroidered garments, and they're busy dividing all these things between themselves. But the delusion cannot last forever, and the truth emerges that her son is dead. Vateyabev, the mother of Sisera, breaks into uncontrollable sobbing. And there were 100 sobs that she cried. And for this reason, the Talmud teaches, we Jews on Rosh Hashanah sound a total of 100 notes of the shofar. If you'll be in shul on Rosh Hashanah, if you will be there for all the sounds of the shofar, you will have heard at least 100 sounds. The mitzvah is to hear 30 sounds, which is what my father will blow those many times for whoever needs to hear, and Shmuel, of course, for whoever needs. But if you were in shul for the entire davening, you would have heard 100. But why? Why must we remember at such a holy time of the shofar, an enemy's mother and her cries? And perhaps there's a great lesson here. The mother of Sisera lived in a dream world. She imagined that the attention she would gain when her son came would be unbelievable. He'd be victorious from war. And then her world came crashing down. She cried because she wouldn't be famous, and her son wouldn't be rich or important or a victorious leader. He was dead, and her dreams were dead. Pre-COVID times, we too may have lived in a very smooth sailing, wonderful world. Human intelligence was at its peak. And then we've cried because the smugness we may have had before COVID is no longer there, realizing that the world is not all of the things we may have remembered. And yet there's a smugness that might still remain spiritually. We may know that our kids or our homes need a little bit more spirituality. And with confidence, we might say, oh, it's okay, the kids will be okay. We can rely on the Jewish content they get from school. And we may not proactively be role models at home for meaningful living. Our kids and our families need to see us praying, us adding in mitzvot, us taking the time to go to a shiur. And God forbid the consequences of prioritizing materialism and helping our kids to fit in and just, allow themselves to be led by peer pressure around them. those kind of things can lead to ramifications that can cause many tears later in life. So Rosh Hashanah reminds us and tells us that nothing in life is guaranteed, and that by ignoring spiritual danger, we invite it into our homes, and that we should rather face the reality now and be proactive in adding spirituality than have to cry vainly later in life. The second woman that I wanted to share about is a woman named Hagar. Hagar was the second of the women who cried. And we read about her in the Torah portion of the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Hagar was a servant of Sarah, and her son Ishmael brought foreign influences into Sarah and Abraham's home. And in the portion we read, she's leaving Abraham's home with her son Ishmael, and she takes a child into the desert. And the Torah tells us that they finish the water that they had, and the child gets ill, and he needs water. So what does Hagar do? Nothing. She casts the child away, saying that she doesn't want to see him die. And she raised her voice and she cried. There was no attempt to save the child. There was no looking for water, which actually was there had she just opened her eyes. There was no real effort at changing her dangerous situation. She just raised her voice and cried. And it's a cry of desperation and of resignation. Unlike Sisera's mother, Sisera's mother denied the facts, but Hagar saw the facts, but she submitted to them. So Rosh Hashanah reminds us of Hagar's crying as well, because by recalling her tears, we learn not to give up. Times may be so hard, things may seem impossible, but to give up, tears of surrender are not okay. Jews don't say, Mahiyeh, what will be? We say, what are we going to do about it? In the case of Hagar, only when Ishmael, her son, himself prayed, did an angel come to Hagar and say, rise up, pick up the child, do something. And then the next verse says that she saw well, and she was able to get water that would nourish her and her son. The third woman that I want to talk about, and the fourth, are two Jewish women, Hannah and Rachel, and they had tears that inspire us to this day. So let's begin with Hannah. Hannah couldn't have children, and we read about her in the Haftarah of the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and we read how she's standing alone in Hashem's holy home, the Mishkan, and she starts to talk to Hashem about her difficulty, and she cried. And there was a holy man there, Eli, who saw her from a distance, and he rebuked her and he said, what are you doing drunk in here? He had never seen somebody swaying quietly with just lips moving. And Hannah answered him, and she said, in the very moving words we read, follow along in the Haftarah of the first day of Rosh Hashanah, she says, I am not drunk. I am pouring out my heart to Hashem. What does Hannah do when she's broken? What does she do when she doesn't see a future? What does she do when she's in so much pain? She talks to Hashem. And I can only imagine the emotions of why me that could have engulfed her and caused her to give up. But instead, she knew that whether we understand it or not, there is a creator who sees a bigger picture that we don't see, and who wants us to express our deepest emotions, even when they are messy. And so she speaks to Hashem, and her words to Hashem are so powerful. She says, please give me a child, not for my own pleasure, not so that I can feel self-fulfilled, not so that I can be happy, not so that I won't feel left out. No, please give me a child whom I can dedicate entirely to you, Hashem, whom I can nurture and teach to be entirely devoted to bringing light into the world in the holiest ways. And my child won't just be like everyone else or better than everyone else because of degrees or prestige. My child will be different, as every Jewish child is different, because we stand out in the mitzvot we do, and in learning Torah, and in rising above the distractions of the world. And indeed, Shmuel, her son, who was born about a year later, became one of the greatest Jewish prophets and leaders that the Jews ever had. And finally, the fourth woman is Rachel. And we read about her in the Haftarah of the second day of Rosh Hashanah, in what's one of the most moving passages and most stirring images. Mom, should I interrupt for a moment? I'm hearing that the internet connection's not so good. Is that correct? But I am on our good connection. Okay, extender. I'm sorry for this. Mom, do you want to unmute and just tell me if this is a little bit better? I've just connected to another connection.
Yeah.
Can you hear me a little bit better? Okay. Okay, thank you. So Rachel is the fourth woman that we read about, and we read about her on the second day of Rosh Hashana, and it's a very moving passage. And Jeremiah describes Mama Rachel, Mother Rachel, crying from her grave over her children who've been forced to leave Jerusalem. Their Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, and they're parading in chains to live in exile. And the prophets tell us, Kol Barama Nishma. I'm sure you know the song. There are many tunes. Kol Barama Nishma, voices heard on high. Kol Barama Nishma, Nehi Bechi Zamromim, Rachel Mevakal Baneha. Rachel is crying for her children from her grave. You know, Rachel lived a hard life and a brief one. And she knew trouble and pain and anguish, and her soul sees her children going into exile, and she knows that this is bitter stuff. But unlike Hagar, she refuses to bow to these realities. She refuses to submit. Her cry, her tears, her protest to Hashem are characteristic actually of Jews throughout time, because a Jewish soul sees the reality and sees the ugliness and sees the pain, but sets out to transform it. And Rachel refused to fall into self-pity. Her tears were tears of strength and determination. Rachel, 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 Mevakal Baneha. She was a tears of strength, knowing that she could do something about it, that she could cry out to Hashem and look with hope to better times. So the tears of Sisera's mother or of Hagar are the end of a story. But for Hannah and for Rachel, it's the beginning. To Rachel's cry, there's an answer. Hashem says, Ka'amar Hashem, Rachel, stop your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, because your work will have a reward. Hashem says your children will come back and the enemy will be destroyed. There is hope for the future. V'shavu banim likvulot, the children will return back home. Judaism teaches in the language of Kabbalah that an iturita de la'ela, an impulse from above or a divine assistance, can only come as a response to an iturita de latata, a human initiative. Hashem helps those who help themselves. Is there loss? Yes. Is there a concern for South Africa? Yes. Are we drained from dealing with the unknowns again and again? Yes. Is it so hard to bring up children in this distracting world? Yes. So we cry. But our tears are tears of Rachel, tears that know deep down that there is hope, that there is what to look forward to with the times of Mashiach, that there is so much we can do every day to bring light into the world, even when it feels so dark. We can learn more and we can reach out to others and we can add in mitzvot on whatever level we are, whether it's kashrut or Shabbat or mikvah or honoring parents or exercising, because looking after our bodies is a mitzvah, and giving 10% of our earnings to tzedakah and more. We can grow even in the mitzvot that are hard, and we can work on ourselves to stop blaming and to stop judging. I've said this many times because it means so much to me. I need to keep thinking of it, that we are taught that the way we judge others is the way in which Hashem judges us. Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment. And if we can be more forgiving and a little kinder to others and to ourselves, those therefore can be tears of strength. Sometimes tears can be self-effacing when we say, I'm not enough, or can that dream ever happen? So the answer is yes. Yes, says Rachel. We can learn to speak kindly to ourselves, to uplift our families and those closest to us. Our tears can be proactive tears. And we know, as we say in the benching and the psukim, Hazorim bedima berina yiktzaru. Hazorim bedima berina berina. If you take tears And tears that are not vain illusions or tears of resignation, but those tears become dewdrops of proactive spiritual growth. Then those tears sow seeds of hope. And with those tears, we can reap a harvest of joy and of happiness and of nachas, and please God, unending blessing. So Jews like to wish each other well, always, and particularly before Rosh Hashanah. I want to wish all of us a K'tiva v'chatima tova, a Shana tova metuka. Reminder that the main mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah, which is coming up, is to hear the shofar. And as we hear the shofar and think about these women who have cried, please God, all of us will channel our tears, because the sound of the shofar often is very moving, that cry of the heart, but not to just remain a cry of the heart, but to channel it into proactive, hopeful tears as Hannah and Rachel. May Corinne's father's neshama have an aliyah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much all for joining this morning. K'tiva v'chatima tova to all of you.